It's a triple threat of thrilling thinky word games in this episode of Little Big Thumbs.
Welcome back to Little Big Thumbs, the channel that is all about talking about great games that are equally fun for little players and big players. My name is JP.
And I'm Milo.
And today we are revisiting a concept that we have been meaning to come back to for quite some time, and that is Word Game Club. We have received 2 new word games from Allplay. One which is a brand new game, and one which is kind of a refurbished game from the past. And then we're going to take these 2 newer games and compare them to a previous Allplay word game that we have a great deal of affection for, and that game is called Fiction.
And by the end of this video, you should know which out of these games we think is best played with kids, which one we think is best played with adults, and which one is good for both.
Right. So, that's an intro. So let's just get to talking about games. So let's go sharpen our tongues, grab our dry erase markers, and go talk about some great word games. Alibis is a cooperative deduction game, where every player is hiding 2 suspects, and each of those suspects have been publicly assigned a word card. Each player secretly writes a clever, or sometimes not so clever, one-word clue that links those 2 suspect words together. Then everyone takes turns revealing their alibi, and it's up to the rest of the group to figure out who has which suspects based on those alibi clues. Once all clues are shared, everyone secretly makes their guesses. The twist is that one suspect wasn't assigned to anyone, and that criminal is the real perpetrator. If any players guess correctly, heat tokens are removed from our collective supply, and the more heat we remove at the end of 3 rounds, the better our score as a team.
Alibis has the potential to spark some wild word connections and inspire creative thinking. But even if a player can't connect both of their assigned words, it's easy enough to try and direct players towards one word and hope they find their way to both.
And in the smallest of nutshells, that is our overview of Alibis.
Wordsy is a real-time showdown of vocabularies with some real brain-burning potential. In each round of the game, we've got 8 letter cards on the table. Some common, some rare, and some worth some serious bonus points. Each player's task is to write down the highest scoring word you can come up with using as many of those letters as possible.
However, we're not just limited to those 8 face-up letter cards. We can use the entire alphabet, but only the bonus letters on the table will score points. When someone locks in their word, they flip the sand timer, and everyone else has 30 seconds to finish up their own words.
Fast thinkers get rewarded, but so do those who take their time and really think about what they're writing, because they do have the potential to steal bonus points as well. After 7 rounds, drop your 2 worst scores, then total up the rest, and crown the Wordsy Wizard! Wordsy is quick, competitive, and feels a little bit different every time we play.
Fiction is a Wordle-inspired deduction game, pitting a team of players working together against one person, their common enemy, the librarian.
At the start of the game, the librarian secretly chooses a 5-letter word from a card based on classic literature. Everyone else works together to guess the word. They have 10 total guesses and 2 10-minute rounds to get it right.
After each guess, the librarian gives a response sharing which letters are correct, which ones are not, and which of those correct letters are in the right place in the word. However, and this is a big however, the librarian must take one of those responses and change it to a lie.
So, the guessing team is not only responsible for figuring out what the word is, but also trying to figure out what's true and what's fake. The team has a couple of fact or fiction tokens they can use to force the librarian to come clean about one letter.
We've said in a past Word Game Club episode that we absolutely love fiction. So now we're going to put these 2 newer games to the test to find out how they stack up against a game that we are already so fond of. So let's go and find out. I think before we go into this, we can probably both agree that Allplay has an amazing eye for really cool and unique word games. So with that said, where do you want to start with this, Milo?
I think that, I mean, in terms of all play games, their markers are my favorite in the entire industry. They're consistent. I don't know. I use them in all of my other games that I play.
You use them in other games as well?
do.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I feel like Allplay somewhere has like this master factory that only produces these wonderful dry erase markers. They've just cornered the market on these lovely markers that, you know, if you open a game of theirs and there's a marker in there, you know what you're going to get. It's going to be
Yeah.
the exact same marker in every game.
It is. The other thing about Allplay, their markers are great and their box size is great. It's so small and compact and they're so consistent that like it's just really, really easy to travel with a bunch of Allplay games in my backpack.
I'm gonna do the hot take right here, Milo, and say that this lineup of small box games, these are like the best, I think, maybe in the history of board gaming. It's so satisfying to organize these little boxes on my shelf and figure out the perfect way to organize them all because they look great. They stack together symmetrically, and it's just so darn satisfying. So Milo, in your opinion, which of these three games would you recommend to play specifically with adults at an adult-only game night?
I think Fiction is the perfect game for a group of adults. Speaking from experience, it is a game that we have at the boardroom in the cafe's collection, and me and my coworkers play it all the time.
Let's think about like the board game cafe setting then. If you host the Sunday social events.
I do.
At the boardroom. So let's say you've got a group of like strangers who don't know each other. They've all come to this open gaming night, and you've got the choice to teach them fiction, or you've got the choice to teach them Wordsy, or you've got the option to teach them Alibis. Thinking about like not knowing their experience levels, but you're still going to be satisfying for adults to play. Which of these three games are you going to pick to teach?
I have actually taught Fiction at a Sunday social.
Oh, okay.
And
All right.
It went over so well.
Right.
In this specific circumstance, it was a good game where people could like work together and therefore like get to know each other a little bit better. And there were different levels of board gaming experience. But it was also a game that sparked conversation based on the different books that Fiction references, which I don't think that children would necessarily know. There's old books in there like Moby Dick, Pride and Prejudice, stuff like that, which wouldn't necessarily be as like interesting for children, but it did spark a lot of conversation with the adults that I've played it with.
So with that being said, then let's transition to talking about which of these three games to play with kids. And in my mind, there's absolutely no question that Alibis is the right game to play with kids. And the reason for that is that it's a really like it's a party game at its core. It's a word game, but it's a party game. And the fact that we're working together gives a lot of like permission for being flexible with it, because you've got your secret bad guy words that you've got to connect into a single alibi. I know when I was playing with my kids, at one point my older daughter was like, I just can't figure out a way to connect these two words. And we said, well, just try to find a way to suggest one of those two words to help us find one. And maybe we'll kind of guess and talk our way through to finding the right answer. And while the goal of the game is to get rid of those heat tokens, not succeeding at doing that doesn't dampen the fun at all. It's just a lot of it is the experience of seeing the alibis, talking about the connections, and seeing if we can do better round after round. And after 3 rounds, it's over. It's pretty darn quick. So Alibis is great to play with kids. And I think that brings us then to talking about when groups of kids and adults are together. Milo, do you have any thoughts on that? On which of these three games might be best in that situation?
The one we have left, Wordsy, is the best that sort of blends both the adult and child experience. It's a game that I've played a couple times now, and sometimes the like big, long word that you're trying to think of doesn't actually score you as much points as you'd think. And so I don't think it's necessarily a game that would be super hard for children, because sometimes they can only make short, small words, and that's still going to get you a lot of points. So I think there's a few different reasons why it works well for both ages.
I'm actually going to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you. I think that actually Wordsy is probably the least accessible for kids. And my reasons are, number one, the sand timer. My kids get stressed and feel a little bit of anxiety anytime like there's that pressure of time in a game. And so that could lead to a negative experience. Feeling like any chance there's a chance in a game that a child, especially who's not like familiar with games, has a chance to maybe feel like a little less than when they're playing a game. There's a potential for that with Wordsy. Whereas like fiction is a game, you know, it's one versus many, and I'm not sure I would ever put a child in charge of being the librarian until they're very, very experienced with the game, because it's so easy to make mistakes when you are choosing that one thing to lie about. But if they're on the team of guessers, you can work together and they can participate without having too much agency put on their shoulders. And Alibis, as I talked about, because it's great for kids, everybody can work together. It is fully cooperative. I think that would be my go-to, like in a family setting. If I were still working at the game cafe teaching games, that's probably the one I would lean towards first in a setting of families or mixed ages and whatnot. But it's really interesting that your perspective is a little bit different than mine. I love it. That's why this setting is so interesting to discuss.
So I'm wondering which game you think would be best to play at 2 players.
Oh my goodness, 2 players. So, well, you and I have played 2 of these games at 2 players. We have played Alibis with 2. And we've played Wordsy with 2. We've probably played. Oh, we played all 3 of them. We played all 3 of them with 2 players. Gosh, you know, like fiction is so great at 2 players. Wordsy, I really loved the head-to-head nature of it. It feels like, I don't know. It felt really good. It was really quick. It was probably the quickest of the 3 games.
Yeah, for sure.
I think probably, at least from my experience, maybe yours is different, but Alibis might be the weakest at 2 players. I think the more players you have at the table for Alibis, the more the conversation is going to bubble up and lead to some funny moments. Thoughts from you probably play more 2-player games than I do.
Yeah, that probably sounds right. I had only played Alibis with you, so I don't have like a group experience for Alibis. I do think that with Wordsy, it's more interesting with more people, because you get to see what other words people come up with using the same set of letters. Like when there's only 2 people, you're only going to have max 2 different words. And if you write the same word, then there's only 1. So I think it's more interesting with more people.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think fiction is the one that works the best.
All right.
For 2 people.
Great. You know, there's also someone else whose opinion we need on this, not just for which one is 2 players, but which one you might like to play, and that's all of you. So if you have a thought on which of these games you are most excited to play, go ahead and leave a comment in this video so that we can discuss. And if you don't want to discuss on YouTube, then make sure to go check out the Family Community Discord server, where you can join the family gamers and Brains on Games and so many others to talk about board games and all the other things surrounding life as board gamers. And so I think that's the end. We've had I think a really interesting discussion on these 3 games. So now it's time to wrap things up. Milo, thank you so much for being here once again. Thank you all for watching, and we will be back again soon. So whether you've got little players
or big players,
make sure that you keep playing games
that make your thumbs go way up. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.